This is Reggie Walker Jr. We're here at Aroma Cigars, Etc. on Monroe Road, and I'm chopping it up with Buck.
All right, man, we got a great show, chopping it up with Buck. I got my guy, Reggie Walker. We're here at Aroma Cigars, Etc. on 9007 Monroe Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. Great spot. You can see, whenever I've come in here, Reg, I usually come during the day and just do some work before it gets too busy. But it's anytime you want to come, it's a great spot. Nas has set us up, the owner here, with some great cigars and just a good vibe. But I wanted to say hello, man. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, we have, and I'm fired up to do it, man. It's gonna be a good time, like you said, over here at Aromas. I've been here plenty of times, man, to watch the game, hang out with the fellas, whatever the case may be. It's a good spot. It's a real good spot.
And he's got us with a cigar called 10 Enemies. I like it. And you can see the logo there. It's their own brand. So we'll bring Nas in a little later. He'll talk a little bit about this, but it's great being here. And Reg, I mean, I'm glad to finally have you on, man. I can remember being at ESPNU. I got here in about 2004. ESPNU started in 05. You came around what year? 08,
about 2011, actually. I popped in about 2011, and it was the right time for me and for what was happening over there.
Okay.
There was more of a push to do more in the college space.
Well, I'm gonna say this too. It was for more of us too, because there wasn't a lot of brothers there.
No, it was
Jay
not.
Walker and I may have been the only couple. Then it started to change.
Absolutely. And then you started to see guys like Andre Ware come through there. And that was important. I think, Kevin Carter came through. And then a lot of the guys that are SEC Network or went through the SEC Network, Booger McFarland,
all of
Marcus Spears, all those guys came through there. But, for me, man, it was, because remember, I was in Bristol before that. And I was in Bristol for 5.5 years. And the big push for me, you have to make decisions in your career, right? You know that, right? We've both been there. And what I had to figure out, I had done so much in Bristol. I had done game day, but the push was for me to go towards more of the NFL projects.
Okay.
And I really wanted to stay around the college space and in the high school space and tell those stories and really develop that part of it.
You got me thinking, what was when you got the call to work at Bristol? I mean, I'll give you a backstory. We could be here for 3 hours if we want to, maybe even more. Nas he'll kick us out at some point. But I think the real key is playing football at Penn State, finishing, getting your communications degree, doing that. But then when you got that call from the worldwide leader to come work at Bristol, what was that like, or how did you evolve into that?
It's crazy, man. It goes back to Penn State indirectly, and there's one thing I want to mention that I think was really, really important in my journey. Coach Paterno was great with me in terms of he knew what I wanted to do, and we had kind of figured out pretty quickly. I mean, I wasn't a starter, that type of situation. But he was very serious about what was my after football plan. And so he would allow me, even during the season, to go be an analyst and do high school games on the radio. So on Friday nights, guys were going to the hotel. I was allowed to go do these games. Now,
how did you talk him into it?
I don't really know. Our academic guy, TK, shout out to Todd Coca, he really helped in that process as well.
Because it's unusual on a Friday night.
Everybody goes to the hotel. That's right. That's right.
We were eating burgers, watching Miami Vice, and doing all that back in my day. Same with you.
I will tell you what helped, though. The Big Ten's rules were a little bit different back then. So, everybody has a travel squad. You have 85 scholarships, but you have a travel squad. In the Big Ten, you can only take 64.
That's right.
That was the way that he was able to make that work for us, because I could just be not one of the 64, but for a home game, I could still dress. Because that just meant you can't take 64 to the hotel.
Did you know when you were in school, what point did you say, I got to do this? Because, I mean, most people don't have the wherewithal because they think, no, I'm going to play. I'm going to get to the next level. I mean, we all think that when we play college football, whether we get to or not.
I think it was twofold for me. Number one, and I love telling this part of it, I went in there as a DB. And I played with guys like James Boyd, who played for Jacksonville. Bruce Branch played in the NFL for a while. Brian Scott played in the NFL. Bao Ju. Some of those guys, so many Alan Zamitis. I mean, I could go on and on. Anwar Phillips. The list goes on and on and on. I think in my 4 years there, something like 13 guys that played corner in the time I was in school signed NFL contracts longer than 1 year.
You got to give Tom Bradley.
Scrap Bradley. He taught me so much football. But what happened was around my sophomore year, I took a labor and industrial relations class because my plan was I was going to play and then become an agent, like Shafi Fields, who played at Penn State, played for the 49ers as well. That was kind of my plan.
Okay.
And I took that LIR class, and I was like, I got a B, by the way, for the record. But I was like, I can't do this the rest of my life. Yeah. This is not me. I need something with a little more energy, a little more movement. So I wanted to stay around the game, did some exploring, talked to some different people, and I found communications and broadcasting.
Okay.
And so that's when I kind of knew I had to, because I wanted to stay around the game.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out what that plan was going to be. And the running joke, I used to tell my dad, I want to be the John Madden of college football. That was my thing.
Yeah.
We'll see if that ever happens. But the best part about it is getting the opportunity to go to a place like ESPN. And the reason why I say it goes back to ESPN, there was a guy that had an internship up there, a guy named Blake Burson, who I knew. And he helped me connect with a guy named Judson Birch, who was a coordinating producer for SportsCenter for a long time. And those two guys, I kept applying. And at some point, Judson was like, somebody interview him. And if he's terrible, we'll never have to hear from him again. Persistence. But if he's good, we're going to get a good one. And that's what ended up happening. And, I had a nice 12-year stint with the company.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I always tell people the real key to me is the 4 versus 40, meaning you have 4 years to get your degree and you can finish earlier or you can finish later. But the 40 years is what the school should set you up for. Going to UCLA, I mean, there have been plenty of opportunities where that UCLA has helped me in situations and networked me in places. I'm sure Penn State the same way. But I also think, too, then when you get there, what do you do with it? So you come down to Charlotte, and Charlotte was really just starting to grow with ESPNU.
Right.
What was that like for you, and what did you see that you had to do to kind of give yourself that next
I tell you, the most interesting aspect of it, and I remember laughing about it to myself, is going, because I had just come from Bristol, where everything is, all the bells and whistles, all the toys. And I walked in ESPNU, I'm like, this is the worldwide leader in not enough equipment to do what I wanted to do.
Reg, we used to do games when we first started with 3, sometimes 4 cameras.
Yeah, it's unheard of.
And the quality of it didn't drop.
No.
But you couldn't see certain things.
Right.
So when I got to ESPN and doing 8, 9, 10 cameras, I'm like, man.
Right. And that's the interesting thing, that's a whole, we can go down that path too, because there's a conversation to be had about some of the lighter production games and what that means in college football, because I'll give you a prime example. I did a game this past year, or actually 2 seasons, this past year, in which there was a difficult call down near the goal line. It goes the other way. Coach loses the game. That becomes the game that takes him past being able to become bowl eligible that year. He gets fired. And the main reason why is because the camera angle that we needed was not there. And that's tough. But getting back to, coming to Charlotte and coming to ESPNU, my mindset and my approach was, I want anything that comes out of this building in Charlotte to look like anything I did in Connecticut. That was my mindset. That was my goal. And, I had a chance to work with, like we mentioned, people like yourself here. And then also in Bristol, man, I had a chance to work with a lot of guys that really, I think that was the time frame for me where I learned that I was smart enough, right? You play ball and you do certain things, but not all of us are super uber confident in everything. And a chance to break down tape with guys like Trent Dilfer and Sean Salisbury and Merrill Hodge, to name a few, Tom Jackson, Kirk Herbstreit, Desmond Howard was great as well, Robert Smith, some of those guys, and they would tell me, man, you know this stuff just as well as I do.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up, because I think what we got from you guys coming in was James Dunn or Desmond Wallace or some of the other guys, along with the guys that were already here, to allow us then to start doing breakdowns.
Right.
Because I remember I pushed for that for years. And you were instrumental maybe on the back end of helping with that, because a lot of times if I was working and traveling, I could say, Reg, here are a couple of 3 or 4 clips I want to look at. And when I got in, because we didn't have all, I love what Dan Orlovsky does now and Marcus and all those guys, but we didn't have the capability to do it. We had to tape it and then show it. But what it showed was, I broke down tape all the time. That's what I did all the time. But the thing was, it was good to be able to have a producer on those segments that understood what I was looking for and what I wanted to see. And that was a fight sometimes over there, know, before, because the technology, the things we saw at SportsCenter, we didn't always have, but once we started getting it, you guys knew how to use that, and that made us better at what we could do.
So it's so funny you mentioned that, and it's funny you mentioned Dan Orlovsky, because he's one of the guys that I look at now, and I think he's one of the best at it.
I love what he does,
Here's what's funny about that technology.
But Ryan Clark is really good in his own right. See, quarterbacks, and I'm going to just say this, I love what Dan does. But if you listen also to Ryan Clark and even Marcus.
That's why they're great together.
When you play these games, you know the game. I look at it from this way, he looks at it from that way.
Absolutely.
But we sometimes tend to say the quarterbacks are the ones that know the game. Brian played a long time at safety. Safety is a quarterback of the defense.
He's on the other side, that's right.
For so long, when I was playing, when I was young, we didn't see a lot of black safeties. Just like black quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
So when I see this, and I love when he and Dan are going at it, because they are battling, even though they can't physically do it anymore. That's what I love to watch with those guys.
It is, and the funny thing about it is that technology. When it became a thing in Bristol, the way it used to work, we'd have to grab a clip, send it, load it. It was a process. I was the first producer to use it.
Wow.
I was the first one that would literally sit down with guys like Merrill and say, okay, the clip is in there. This is how you have to manipulate this. All that touchscreen technology, I was one of the first ones to use it. And so it helped me, because I think what made me really grow in my career there was, and I say this all the time, I became the bilingual translator. And what I mean by that is I had to speak TV, production, and football. Because I had to be able to explain the football to the higher up producers and coordinating producers coming from the analysts. And then I had to explain back to the analysts what those producers were looking for and how we had to mesh that together. So it was really my job. Honestly, I look at it and laugh. I was basically a coordinator.
And how many times, and you don't have to name names, but I know this happens all, because it's happened with me. When I have a producer trying to tell me what I saw, and how I should call it or what I should say. And I've had some
and that's where, to be honest with you, I think that's where I made a lot of my, for lack of a better term, my money up there, right? Here. Because I was able to say to a producer, no. That doesn't make sense. I get what you're trying to do, but that's not what's actually happening on this play. Because I can see it from your perspective, and then I can explain it to them as well. And I think that's what really helped me, was being that person in the middle that was able to, that was trained to do TV as a producer, but also a trained, if you will, football player. And being able to speak both languages and be that conduit was really, really important. And I leaned into that in my career, because I knew that's the lane I had to master, right? I always say, if you stay in your lane, there's less traffic.
That's true.
There wasn't nobody in my lane doing that. And that sounds arrogant, but I took that confidence to a whole nother level.
So who are your biggest influences, both on the football side of it, but also the production side? Who have been the biggest mentor influences? Because we all have people that we kind of look to, and who came before you that was doing that, and then you were able to put your own spin on it.
I think about that all the time, and one of the cats that really pops into my head and it will never go away is Lydell King. Lydell King, now I believe he's in the role, he's the coordinating producer running NFL Live, I believe now. Lydell played at, I want to say Cornell. He definitely played in the Ivy League. He's from Jersey. But I met him up in Connecticut, and he really kind of leaned into helping me understand really the game of how to move around up there.
Okay.
And so Lydell Mitchell, Penn State guy,
Yeah.
but Lydell King,
Baltimore Colts.
yeah,
Also.
Baltimore Colts, yeah, Mr. Mitchell, all that, South Jersey, Salem, New Jersey. Check this out, my best friend grew up right across from the Mitchell family in Salem, New Jersey.
Yeah.
How wild is that?
That is crazy.
But Lydell was really, really big on really helping me lean into and understand that production aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I continued to grow in my career, I had a chance to work with different producers that really pushed me, Michael Fountains of the world, the Desmond Wallaces of the world as well.
You know,
really
one guy that comes to
great.
mind is Kim Belton, only because Kim was a really outstanding basketball player.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of guys, and I think we were all on a call during COVID, how this all came together. But Kim Belton is another name that I've heard, you know, people that have worked with him. I haven't had a chance to work with him much.
Right.
But he is one of those guys, that former basketball player, really a outstanding basketball player, I think at Stanford. Yeah. And then transitioned to the TV side of it.
Yeah, so I was on the studio side of everything, and I had a chance with Game Day, Kirk Herbstreit, and those guys. It was great working with those guys. But with Kim, a lot of people used to tell me, watch his games.
Yes.
Because he produces games. He's more remote. So they would tell me, hey, watch his games. Watch how he uses analysts. Watch how he uses talent. Watch how they integrate all of that into the broadcast to tell the full story. So I would study him and what he was doing without knowing who he was.
Yeah.
And that really helped me as well to be able to articulate and understand how to articulate in short bursts, because now, as you know, I've switched to sort of the other side.
Yeah. Todd Coolidge was like that for me early on, because all I did was call games. And then when I had to come in the studio, that changed.
Right.
But I still wanted to keep my game or remote mind for the studio, because people. We'll take a break and we'll come back and talk a little bit about that. Now that you're doing more of that, we're here at Aroma Cigars, etc. in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've got Reggie Walker. We're on Chopping It Up with Buck. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, welcome to Aroma Cigars, 9007 Monroe Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. I want to thank everybody for coming out and seeing what we have here. We have great cigars. This is our humidor, and we carry everything pretty much that you'll like, from Ashton to Drew Estate to one of my favorites, Caldwell Cigars, which is right here on the back wall. Caldwell Cigars also helps me make my personal cigar, which is called 10 Enemy Cigars. 10 Enemy Cigars is just featured in Cigar Journal. So we have a great cigar. Just a little bit about my cigar. It's a Nicaraguan wrapper, has a Nicaraguan and Dominican filler, and it's also Sumatra binder. So it sells very good. It's a great quality smoke. You definitely will enjoy it. So just come on out, Aroma Cigars. Again, it's 9007 Monroe Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. Have a drink, have a cocktail, great cigar, and great people.
All right, we're back chopping it up with Buck. We are at Aroma Cigars, etc. Got to come check it out when you're in Charlotte. Real good spot. This cigar, 10 Enemies, is really outstanding, along with a little Uncle Nearest 1856. I don't know about you, Reg. I think these are pretty doggone
doing
good.
The trick. Both of them doing the trick.
Doing the
well, this 10 Enemies, obviously never had it before. This is a very, very good, smooth smoke. I like this stick right here.
So you can come here, you can get something to drink. If you want an adult beverage, you can have that. You can have anything else. But they also have a nice little humidor, and they've been very gracious to have us here. And we'll probably come back. That's what we try to do. Local places, we want to make sure they understand their value to us and us to them. So, but getting back to the story you were talking about a little bit about just making the transition. You know, we were at ESPN together. I got let go in 17, now kind of back doing games. So it was a little bit different for me, but what was your journey when it ended, or like when you had to take that next step?
Yeah, it was, it was interesting because I had, in a way, kind of gotten comfortable, right? There were some things that happened before that, right? I had seen some layoffs happen there before that, and I made it through those, and I was like, okay, I'm good, I'm hanging. And then it happened, right? And it was tough. But what I did in that moment is I had to look myself in the mirror. And I always say this: if you can't look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth, you got a problem.
No.
And I was able to look in the mirror and say, you had a great run, but you're still not where you want to be. Even when you were there, you're not where you want to be.
What was it that you wanted to do? What was it? Where did you want to be?
I always wanted to call games. I always did. But
what would they tell you? Because now that I know the backstory, and I think I heard this before, that you were calling games, and when you were playing.
Yeah. And that was the plan, but you coming out of school, and I took a production position with my mindset of I got to get in.
Yeah.
Then when I got there, there was a little reminder real quick.
Yeah.
You don't switch over.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I was kind of like stuck, but I was like, you know what?
They will let certain people, and sometimes you can. But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, there was a time. Remember when they were looking to maybe bring back after the first time it folded the Arena League. Yeah. There was a time that came up, and that discussion happened for me, and then they didn't end up going that direction with the Arena League anyway. So that would have been my window to maybe switch over. That didn't end up happening. But for me, it was always to do that. So what I decided, after getting laid off, and I was like, I'm gonna find a full-time job, but I got to get in a booth. I can't. At some point you got to do the work. And so I started off doing high school games on the radio, streaming, and it was fun. And the thing I learned the most about that, and I mean this respectfully to everybody that calls games.
Yeah.
If you can call a high school game,
you can call anything.
Because there's no information. There's no SIDs.
No.
There's no film to watch half the time.
Yeah.
You can't get anybody on the phone. There's a lot of aspects that make it very, very difficult.
I had so much fun calling games when I was in Indy. And then when you got to the time you will get notes, is during the playoffs or the state championships.
Right.
And then they want to give you everything.
Or you get lucky. You get the same team 2 or 3 times.
That's right.
That's when you really feel, because now you got reference points, the games you had earlier in the year, all those types of things. So I started doing high school games on the radio. I just pushed. And then the following year, 2018, I had a great opportunity, again, through contacts, to call some college football. Division II on the radio, Johnson C. Smith. I was the radio analyst for Johnson C. Smith football.
Yeah.
And
that's the beauty of being here in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
Because you got South Carolina football, you got North Carolina football, a lot of opportunities to call games.
And the passion is there for everybody. And so had a chance to do that. And then after that, we had a chance to move to FCS football, and then I got basically a situation where I had a chance to call an FBS game at Charlotte. Their normal ESPN Plus analyst wasn't able to make it. I did the game. Then they asked me, why don't you do all of them next year? And that's kind of how that thing took off.
Yeah.
And it's been going really well. And as you know, you and I talk, and sometimes I'll call you, hey, have you seen this team? What are your thoughts? And then I think that's the other fun part of it is we can, we get on the phone and we just talk ball. And I think that's because I've always said, anytime you're in a conversation, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to learn something.
Well, when you read the stories, like I love the Negro Leagues in particular, but I love hearing people talk about Satchel Paige and even the great Josh Gibson. Whenever I go to D.C., I go by a statue because I've heard from Buck O'Neil and others that have now passed. When he hits the ball, you knew it was a different sound, and that's during the era of Babe Ruth or anybody else when he hit over 800 home runs. But I love the stories about how they would talk ball and how he would sometimes tell them. Willie Mays told a story. He told them, next time, y'all tell me when that kid comes back up, so I'm going to tell him what I'm going to do to him. And Willie Mays says, there's no way you're going to do what you just said. And he did exactly what he did. Those are the things why I think we gravitate towards each other and talk ball, because it may be something I don't see or that you trigger, and I think that's the beauty of it. When guys really know ball, they don't mind talking about it together, or just say, oh man, that's great, yeah, let me think about that, or what do you think about this? Because when you go talk to coaches, if they work their salt and go, they're consistently saying, hey, this is what I learned, this is where I went to go learn this. Absolutely. Efren Bonda just did it when I called his games at Utah State. Now he's at Cleveland. He said, I had to learn how to stop the Air Force. So he said, we spent all this money. We took all our people to do it. He said, because I admitted, I can't stop this team. And they end up beating them in the game I call.
Right.
Those are the kind of things I think about when you share ideas of how the game evolved and how you talk about the game.
I remember, and this is so funny, and I know I'm pretty sure you'll remember this. I'm trying to remember what game you had that week. But I walked in the barbershop. You were in the chair, and you were watching film in the chair.
Oh, yeah.
And we both were I kind of peeked over your shoulder, and we're both looking at it. I said, what are we doing with the whole player right here? And we got on this whole, and the guys in the barbershop were looking at us like, what the hell are they talking about? For 15 minutes.
Well, Bandit or Baron,
right?
Or, whatever you call
it. And that's the great part of it, right? I think that's the other thing that has always been fun for me is the terminology, right? Because like you just mentioned, that's 3 different names, right? I remember earlier this year watching the playoff. I was with one of my old college teammates. Shout out to Marcus Mills, and we were just sitting there watching the game. His in-laws were in town, and we're like pausing the game.
And that's Marcus Mills, Sam Mills' son.
Correct.
Who Sam Mills knocked the living snot out of my ass in OTAs when I was a rookie because I was beating them all. He said, "Rook, you can do that when you put the pads on." So I got much love for Sam.
Absolutely, yeah. But we found ourselves literally pausing the TV and explaining and talking through things with each other. Thus, in turn, his wife, the kids, his in-laws.
My wife will say, "What are you doing up in that office at 2 a.m?"
Right.
I'm watching.
That's exactly right.
These plays because I got it, and she's like, I mean, but it is. I have a book. I'm writing. I'm like, ooh, I can stop. I can go back. Yeah. It's crazy how that.
I laugh when you say that because I think back to we've had conversations about making our charts.
Yeah.
Right. I do mine electronically. I type a lot of it in there, but it's still my work. You handwrite more so now as well, but. Putting those charts together, that's the journey for us. That's the fun part. When the game starts, the information is in front of us.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I tell people all the time, the great part about calling a game is you take the test before the game starts.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. So Reggie, calling games, Sports Business Journal. This is really interesting to me because I've always, I just got my MBA and I'm intrigued about the business of sports. I don't know. I spent a lot of time watching ESPN, but I spent a lot of time watching CNBC and Bloomberg too. And I wish there was a sports channel for business now because it's become that way. You guys do a great job at SBJ. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing there and how that works.
Yeah, I'm doing multimedia, but a lot of what we're doing is we're producing a lot of content that goes with our written or digital content as well. Okay. So what we call somewhat companion pieces at times. But what I've really the best part for me, I've been there a little over 2 years now, and it's every day I'm learning something. And the cool thing is now when I go call a game, let's just say I'm calling an FCS game. I'm not just looking at the players. I'm also looking at their uniforms, who the sponsor is, because that tells me about the resources. And that also tells me the limitations of those programs. You look at some of these schools and you go, how are they not winning? Well, the math says they've got no chance.
Well, and you just bring up a good point. 85 scholarships in FBS. 63 in FCS, but some FCS schools only have 48, right?
Correct. That's, for instance, I'll give you, there's a great example of that.
Because my guy Tiger Clark was explaining that to me a couple of years ago at Robert Morris.
He's at Robert Morris. That was the example I was going to use.
Yeah.
So Robert Morris and Brian, they are both now associate members of the Big South. So the Big South is a conference that at one point encompassed Gardner-Webb, Charleston Southern, Campbell, North Carolina A&T was in the league for a while as well, some other schools also. But they were at 63, 65 scholarships, 63. That's what they were. Well, coming out of the Northeast Conference, which is where Robert Morris, which is where Bernard Clark, we call him Tiger, is at, and the Northeast Conference is also where Bryant University is.
That's right.
At one point, they were a Division II school. But now, in the Northeast Conference, both of those schools only had that 40 40. They were in the 40s of scholarships.
Wow.
So here's the thing that people don't understand about the business aspect. Just because you joined the Big South doesn't mean you go to 63 scholarships the next year.
Yeah.
You have to do it at the pace at which the school can maintain it financially. So you can't go from 40 to 65 or 40 to 63. You got to go. You have to gradually move up. So again,
unless you use a transfer portal or you kick people off the team, and generally that happens as you're the first year head coach in the FBS. FCS, I'm not as
you can't, because the school has to be able to maintain it financially.
That's right.
So you can't just add 20 scholarships. And so when you look at what is going on at Robert Morris and a place like Bryant, the resources are not there for them to do certain things. Which is why, and that's the tough part, right? And I think people lose sight of this. We've both called them what we call those guarantee games. Think about it. There are some cases. I know a school in the FCS level, their entire football budget is $600,000.
And that's why they'll take 2 or 3 of those games.
They'll take 2 of those games to get $800,000 so they can have a little bit of a surplus. You have to do it because financially that's the only way you can survive.
Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back and talk NIL and transfer portal and kind of finish it up. Chopping it up with Buck, I have Reggie Walker with me here, and we're just nice little deal here with the Aroma Cigars, etc. In Charlotte. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, welcome to Aroma Cigars, 9007 Monroe Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. I want to thank everybody for coming out and seeing what we have here. We have great cigars. This is our humidor, and we carry everything pretty much that you would like, from Ashton to Drew Estate to one of my favorites, Caldwell Cigars, which is right here on the back wall. Caldwell Cigars also helps me make my personal cigar, which is called 10 Enemy Cigars. 10 Enemy Cigars is just featured in Cigar Journal. So we have a great cigar. Just a little bit about my cigar. It's a Nicaraguan wrapper, has a Nicaraguan and Dominican filler, and it's also Sumatra binder. So it sells very good. It's a great quality smoke. You definitely will enjoy it. So just come on out, Aroma Cigars. Again, it's 9007 Monroe Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. Have a drink, have a cocktail, great cigar, and great people.
All right, we're back chopping it up with Buck. We're at Aroma Cigars, etc. here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I got Reggie Walker. Kind of wrapping up here, Reg, but I really appreciate you coming on. And we kind of talked a little bit about the sports business, but I wanted to get your take on, and we'll do this again, of course. I mean, we don't have enough time, but NIL and transfer portal. NIL, we know, is already here in college football, but now it's even gotten to the high school level, which is going to be really interesting. And then the transfer portal. What are some of your takes on those two aspects?
Yeah, I'll start with the NIL first. I think first of all, I'm a fan of it. I'm here for it. I have no issue with these kids.
No guardrails whatsoever?
Well, I think, to me, the only guardrails would be within, obviously within reason. I would limit some of the brands to get involved with, especially, I mean, you can't have a 19-year-old football player, promoting alcohol. That just, to me, he can't even legally drink it.
Even though gambling's legal now.
Even though gambling's legal, right. That's a whole other, right. That's a whole, right.
We do that show.
But to me, it's just one of those things where it just doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. And I laugh about it all the time. Now you watch some of these commercials, even professional athletes.
Yeah.
Whatever they're selling, half the time they're not eating the food or drinking the drink.
That's true.
They're just holding it up. And so I don't know if that and maybe it's part of the way I was raised. My mom and my grandmother were always the type to where, if I was in the house and they were having some drinks, you better not ask me to go get my dad another beer. My mom might take somebody's head off. That was just not a rule. That was just not a thing, right? That was a rule.
Yeah.
So those are the only kind of guardrails I would really push for in the space. And then I would just remind kids, particularly if you're a college athlete on scholarship, the reason you're here is still to play football, and you're not going to get a bigger brand on the field by not playing. So don't think that it's okay to skip practice or a meeting because you're going to go do an endorsement deal. That to me doesn't work.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't have a problem with it. The fact that it's trickling down into high school, my whole thing is going to be, what are the companies that get involved with these high school age athletes? Because what are you, like even for instance, let's use cars.
Yeah.
okay, a 16-year-old quarterback, yes, he can drive, so maybe he gets a car. But you're marketing to oftentimes a bunch of 14 and 15-year-old kids that their mom has to buy the car. And it's great. If a 16-year-old can get a Maserati, more power to them. But most moms are not buying their 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid a Maserati. So I don't think that's going to work with, who they may get involved with. So I would kind of caution how they did that. But I don't have a whole lot of an issue with NIL. I think the only issue I would have with NIL actually is at the college level.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean. Because of that and the transfer portal combined, it's an issue because it has become go get your NIL money regardless of the commitment you may have made to a school. And here's the thing, I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that. What I'm saying is I think some of these NIL deals should be longer deals, and if you sign them, you can't break them, right? We still need to promote and teach the construct of a contract and what it means that you have to honor that. And I would push some of these brands that are doing NIL deals with college athletes. I want multi-year deals. Make them multi-year deals instead of trying to do one-year deal. Oh, you didn't play well enough. That's not, because some of these kids are getting NIL deals before they take the field or the court. And you don't know how good they're going to be.
And that's a problem. I mean, to me, ultimately, that's a problem because you don't know what you're buying, basically. You don't know what you're putting your money to. Transfer portal, real quick. One of the things that I love about it, it'll allow guys, when schools don't want them, to go and get in that and then leave. The problem I have with it, though, is that there's so many guys that go to what I call transfer portal purgatory, which could be even worse because you're stuck. They don't come back out. They don't end up going anywhere else. They're just stuck in a system where they're not going to finish.
That's my biggest concern. Yeah. And here's why that's my concern.
We talked about that, man, before it happened.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you.
Kev were talking about Kevin
That's
Carter.
right, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you why that scares me. Because there are coaches out there in college football, particularly, I'm going to go there first, that despite it being a multi-billion-dollar business and their jobs are always on the line, there are times where they take kids just to help them change their family situations and dynamics. They're not great players. They're not guys that are going to be high performers for them. But the coach takes them to give them an opportunity. And those are the guys oftentimes after a year of not playing, they get frustrated, they get upset, they jump in the portal, and all of a sudden, they never get out. Those are the ones that I'm the most concerned about because they're getting an opportunity to change their life trajectory. And it still doesn't go that way because they get a little bit antsy and make that mistake. And I will say this, I am all about repercussions for decisions. I have no problem with the fact that many coaches, I've talked to, there are at least 30 college coaches at the Division I level that I know have this rule. If a kid tells me they're interested in going in the portal, I will sit down with them and have a full-fledged conversation and make sure that is exactly what they want to do. And at the end of it, I tell them, if you put your name in that portal, which, by the way, for the record, they don't have to tell their coach they're going in the portal. A lot of people don't realize that. They just have to go to compliance and do it. But a lot of coaches will tell them, if you go in that portal after our conversation, I don't care what happens, you're not coming back here.
And that's where I think there also needs to be if you go and you're not able to, there should be able to come back. But it's a much bigger topic than we can talk about.
Absolutely, we could go on and on about that.
The other piece I think too is I love when kids are D2 guys or FCS and they're able to move to the FBS level, but a lot of them overshoot and think, hey, I had 100 catches, 1,000 yards in this division. I'm going to go up there and prosper. And you never hear or see them again.
I saw that happen to a kid. He went FCS up to FBS. He did okay. He still found himself undrafted. And I would argue that if he had stayed at the FCS level and he probably in 2 more seasons, he probably would have caught upwards of 200 passes. He would have found his way to being drafted late.
In football, you have to play.
I think
you have to be on the field to play. So we got a thing called 2-minute drill where we just kind of march down the field. Quick questions, rapid fire. First thing on your mind. What you jamming right now on the Apple Music, Spotify? What's in the mixer?
A lot of Rick Ross, and then a lot of 90s, early 2000s R&B. I'm a big R&B dude. I don't know where it came from, but
Jodeci?
I like. Yeah, Jodeci, Drew Hill, Guy. I'll go back to Guy a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Let's chill. I can't sing. I ain't gonna do that. But all of those, that genre right there. I was raised by my pops. I like some 70s music too.
Yeah.
Shout out to Charlie Wilson too, man. He's been doing it for a long time, all the way back to Gap Band.
Uncle Charlie.
I like listening to Uncle Charlie.
Uncle Charlie's a bad dude.
Yeah.
Those are good, and it's always interesting now that my kids will come to me and say, "Dad, did you know about this group?" Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Music tends to make people make the world go round.
Oh yeah.
Fish, steak.
You know, if you would have asked me this 10 years ago, I would have told you steak all day.
Yeah.
I'm leaning more to fish now. As I get a little older, get a little gray in the beard, I'm looking for the lighter food.
Yeah.
So now I've been going a little bit more with the fish.
And you're a big foodie. We didn't even get into that.
Yeah.
We'll do that next time. So yeah, I agree with you. Nothing like a good Chilean sea bass, blackened, or something like that. Because that steak, as much as I love it, boy, it sits on you.
That's exactly right. It sits on and you feel it, right?
Yeah.
And it's nothing like having a nice, good, and I can go into restaurants around this Charlotte area for days.
Yeah.
A nice, good piece of seafood with some good sides at a restaurant, and you get full, but you go home and you don't feel full.
I know. Mountains or beach?
Mountains, actually. Ironically, I sweat really fast, so I don't like the heat. I don't like sand in my toes. Sand gets everywhere.
It does.
So I'm much more of a mountain guy. I like to,
The beauty of LA was you could be here in the mountains in 1 minute and right there on the water, or see the water.
Right, and that's the cool thing about what I like about the mountains too is you can still get that warmer climate.
Okay.
But it's not as warm.
Yeah.
And ain't nothing wrong with, sitting at, you go rent a place up in the mountains or something. You can sit out there, have a stick, have something nice to drink. And you can do it either way. If it's 75 degrees, you could have something light colored to drink and sit outside. If it's down in the 50s, you can have some bourbon or something and relax. And both either way, you can still have a stick.
All right, last question. You're getting down the field, marching close. The greatest story that you never told.
The greatest story that I've never told. Wow.
That you'll only hear on Chopping It Up with Buck.
Wow. There's some good ones that I think through. But probably, and I laugh about this one the most, high school basketball out on the West Coast. And it's less wild and more funny. But my dad never missed anything.
Okay.
And I don't know, my dad's retired military, but that dude, I don't know how he did it. He found a way to get to everything. That dude was at every game. I don't know how he did it. But I remember I used to always laugh. And, I'd be on the court and I'd be playing. And I was fiery. I was a very intense guy. And I'd make plays, whatever. And during games, he would sit right behind the bench and he'd kind of get in my ear, why you throw that pass, blah, blah, blah. But I remember one time we were at home and my mom said something. I used one of those 4-letter words. And I said, Mom, I can't believe you saying that. And my dad looked at me, he goes, that ain't nothing worse than anything you've ever said on the court. And all I could do was laugh because I'm like, I didn't think you were paying attention to that.
He heard everything.
And he heard absolutely everything. I think that's one of the things that stands out to me. I don't tell that story.
Yeah. Pops heard.
Because it's real simple, but Pops heard everything. And what it also told me was he was allowing me, in those moments of intensity and being a competitor to just be me.
Yeah.
But I knew what I better not say when I came home, right? That was that separation.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I value to this day. That the way I was raised, man, I was able to see everything, but was pulled away from a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
There was that good balance of going out there and test it, or no, you don't need to mess with that right now.
Yeah.
And I look at that to this day, man, and I'm just happy I had it.
That's good stuff. Well, man, it's been good having you on. You score again. Everybody kind of comes on here and score, usually. But some great questions, great answers. And Appreciate you coming on the Chopping It Up with Buck show. We are every week we do this, but it's good to actually do it live in person. And I think that's how it all started. But Reg, thanks for coming on. Chopping It Up with Buck. We were here at Aroma Cigars, etc. Aroma Cigars, etc. on Monroe Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you're ever in town, come by. You got the 10 enemies, you got whatever you need, and they've done a really nice job for us. So thanks for watching the show. We'll be back next week.